Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's Lean-In session. I'm Michael Linke, and on behalf of the Australian Institute of Architects, it's really good to have you with me again today. In today's Lean-In session, media and marketing expert Rachael Bernstone is joining me, and so she's going to show us how to get a helicopter view of what's delivering results in your architectural practice using analytics and using metrics from the platforms that you may already currently be using. She's going to recommend the most effective platforms and channels for architects and how to use them to build connection and how to build engagement with clients, both past, present, and future. Today's session is being recorded. I do want to stress that. So if you miss any part of it, then by all means do come back to the Institute's website later on this afternoon and the recording will be there live for you. Don't forget as well that there is a chat box function in here. So if you have any questions for Rachael throughout the time of this presentation, then by all means pop them into the chat box down there, and then I'll go through those questions with Rachael at the end of her session as well. So a little bit about Rachael Bernstone. Rachael's a journalist. She's a comms advisor for architects. She's a really strong advocate for good design. She works with practice directors and principal architects and helps them develop really fantastic communication strategies that focus on winning new projects and communicating the really important value of architecture. She founded Sounds Like Design 4 years ago and uses that as a communications consultancy for architects and contributes to architecture and design publications, including Houses Magazine, Artichoke, Habitus, InDesign, Sanctuary, and also AD, Architectural Design. And she joins me today. So Rachael, welcome to the program. Great to have you with us here at the Institute of Architects. How are you today?
I'm very well, thanks, Michael, and it's a great pleasure to be here with you.
Pleasure. So we'll hand it over to you, Rachael, to take away. Tell us a little bit about the program today, and it's all yours.
Thanks very much. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining me at this Lean-In session, and thanks also to Michael and Kat from the Institute for the opportunity to present to you today. Before we commence, I'd like to pay my respects to the Indigenous people on whose lands we live and work. In my case, that's the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, and I extend my respects to all elders past and present across the country. So to kick off, I'd like it if you could try and drop me a line in the chat box around your title or position in your practice. That will help me understand towards the end of the session who's coming today and who's responsible for marketing in your practices. One of the things that I've noticed with architecture firms, particularly smaller firms where there isn't a dedicated comms team, the director usually feels responsible for steering and guiding marketing, but also implementation. And hopefully using these methods will help you get a clearer sense of what's working for you, and also how you might delegate some of those tasks to others in your practice if you'd like to. So for those of you who don't know me, Michael's explained that my name's Rachael Bernstone. I've been a journalist for 20 years, and I started writing about architecture specifically in 2002. I've been self-employed as a freelance journalist since 2005, and as Michael said, I write articles for a range of publications, and I launched Sounds Like Design in 2016 when my family moved to Perth. So now I also consult to architects on their business strategy, communications and marketing. So I want to say from the start that I use the same methods to communicate with my ideal clients, which is you, that I recommend that you use to communicate with yours. So I also want to say up front that I'm not a digital native. You can probably tell from the look of me that I didn't grow up in the noughties or the teens. I worked in 1990s in a Hollywood film studio in London in a marketing role. And when I came back to Australia, I spent a year at Fox Studios when it was operational in Sydney. In 2001, with a friend who was an architect, I had a chance meeting with Davina Jackson when she was editing Architecture Australia. And that meeting prompted me to think about becoming an architecture writer. So since then, I've interviewed thousands of architects and their clients about projects and processes, and the insights that I've gained along the way have helped me frame my views on communicating the value of good design. Marketing has a bit of a bad rap in architecture, and I think that we need to pare it back and just remember that it's about sharing your passion. And from my conversations with architects, most are very passionate about the work they do and the kinds of change that they might be able to deliver into the world. I think it's also important, and architects have to do this as a regulatory compliance issue anyway, is to keep upgrading your skills. But around modern marketing techniques and methods, there's always something new to learn. So understanding new platforms and tools and how they work together as a whole is an essential part of my business, because the marketing and media landscape is in the process of being remade. The emergence of the internet and more recently the rise of smartphones and social media have changed everything we thought we knew about marketing. So I've taken modern marketing techniques and methods and adapted those for use by architects, mainly because architects have very different marketing needs to most other kinds of goods and services that are being sold and marketed across different sectors now. However, I think it's worth reminding you that in spite of those differences, architects still need to appeal to people. At the end of the day, your clients are people. So it's important to understand how modern marketing works so that you can connect and engage with your future clients in the ways that they now expect brands and companies and services to interact with them. So going back to this slide, most architects are passionate about what they do, especially around using design to improve people's lives and the built environment. So I help architects to unlock and frame that passion and then communicate it in ways that are going to be readily understood by people who don't necessarily have design training or knowledge. So the first purpose of this session is to provide you with access to my marketing metrics tracking spreadsheet, and I'm also going to describe how to use it in the context of this system that I've developed called the 6-channel architecture marketing system. And this is very much around teaching you how to catch a fish rather than giving you a fish. I want to make it easy for you to master marketing in your own practice. So by using my spreadsheet and narrowing down your marketing activities to focus just on the 6 key channels, you'll be able to discern in a fairly short time, possibly over the next 3 months, where your website traffic is currently coming from, and hopefully from that you're finding new clients as well, and which channels perform best practice. And then these insights will help you refocus and strategically target how you invest your time and your money going forwards. Basically, I want to help you understand what's working so that you can do more of that, and what's not working so that you can either tweak those activities if you think there's still life in them, or just redirect your efforts elsewhere. So this method is also designed to help you make your marketing activities more cohesive and streamlined across all those channels. And the data and analytics that you collect will help guide and inform your future plans. So if you haven't already downloaded the spreadsheet, you can easily grab it now while you're watching the presentation, and Kat has put a link to this site where you can grab it from in the chat. So as an aside, this spreadsheet is what's called a lead magnet, and I'm going to discuss lead magnets and how you might use them in your practice a bit later on. So you can obtain this lead magnet by visiting the link. You enter your name and your email address and you click on Get the Tracker, and you'll receive an automated email within a fairly short time frame with a download link, and then you can save it to your computer. It's an Excel spreadsheet, and then you'll be able to open that and look through it while we're talking. So I've already said that the methods that I use are the same ones that I recommend that you apply. And this is all about attracting and engaging with new clients. And it's also an opportunity for you to demonstrate to them that you understand what they need, what their problems are, how you might be able to solve them. You can demonstrate your expertise by providing this information, which is free upfront in exchange for an email. And so perhaps during the course of this presentation, you might start to think about what your lead magnet might look like if you decide to go down this path. So once you have your spreadsheet, and if it's possible for you today, it'd be great if you can turn off any distractions so that you can concentrate on the session for the next 45 minutes or so. I'm going to be sharing a lot of valuable insights around marketing and how to reach and connect with your prospective clients. And so depending on how you currently do that, different parts of this presentation will resonate with you and be applicable to your practice. So let's begin. If you're currently confused about how to market your practice, you're not alone. And it's worth remembering that until 20 years ago in some states, here in WA and South Australia being two, it was prohibited for architects to advertise their services. So the idea of overtly promoting your practice and yourself as an architect requires a mindset shift for some people, especially those who've been in business for 20 years or more and operated under that old regime. I've also identified other key reasons that mean that some architects struggle to market themselves. So these include things like a belief that the work should speak for itself, a lack of time to understand and implement all the different marketing techniques and channels that exist now, lack of funds around engaging a marketing and communications expert. There's an inward focus within the profession that prioritises communication to peers and the profession itself. There's also a reliance on jargon and archi-speak, which has the unintended consequence of excluding people who don't have design training. And, you know, let's face it, the majority of your clients probably fall into that category. There's also a preference for communicating visually, and that can translate into a lack of confidence about writing about architecture. So I want you to remember as well that they don't teach you in architecture school how to run a practice and become proficient at marketing. And most students don't come into contact with many clients at all during the course of their studies. So when you graduate and enter the workforce or you start your own practice, you're basically expected to work this stuff out for yourself. And there's very little at the moment in the way of CPD to guide you, although that's something that I'm intending to introduce pretty soon. So hopefully if you're interested in learning more about marketing and how to bring clients into your practice, you might be interested in undertaking some of those courses with me. So if you're not sure about how modern marketing works and how consumers expect to engage with brands these days, it's quite difficult to know which options you should use and how to measure any progress that you might be making. So questions you might ask yourself are, you know, which metrics should I be keeping an eye on? And even if you have been in the habit of occasionally looking at your website analytics, which I definitely encourage you to do, I wonder if you know how to read them in the context of all the other pieces of your marketing jigsaw. If you don't have a comprehensive understanding of what's actually involved here, it can be very daunting to try and dip your toe in the water and find out what you should do. So without a proven framework, it's very hard to know what's going on in your practice. And so you're not sure whether your awards entries are bringing in new traffic or published articles about your projects. You know, what is it actually that's driving people to visit your website and then hopefully start to engage with you? What role does social media play in helping you connect with your future clients? And then the question becomes, should you be spending your time updating your website or creating new social media posts or on something else entirely? And this is where architects get stuck and there's too much choice, too much overwhelm, and it just becomes something that goes into the too hard basket. But that is where this marketing metrics tracking spreadsheet is really going to provide you with a great deal of clarity, I'm hoping. So basically, I've distilled all the likely marketing channels that you might use into just the 6 key channels that I recommend that architects should use. And you don't have to use them all. You can use a combination of these, and they will deliver the most bang for buck for your practice, depending on the type of work that you do and that you want more of. So the channels include old school methods like awards and publishing, and I recommend that you use those in a very strategic way to target and speak to future clients rather than to just improve your standing in the profession or gain kudos from your peers. It's very much around using publishing and awards as a way of speaking to and reaching new clients. And the 6 channels also include newer methods like social media and email marketing, and because they play an important role in expanding your reach and influence and building up knowledgeability, likability and trust between you and your future clients. So today's session is going to focus on the framework and the 6 key channels. But first, I want to just zoom out a bit and give you a bit of context about how these issues or topics fit into your overall architecture and marketing strategy. So I said earlier that marketing is really just about sharing your passion, and you can pretty easily just distill it down to 3 simple questions. So they are, who do you wish to speak with? What do you want to tell them? And what are the channels that you're going to use to deliver that messaging? So architecture marketing is not a dark art. It can be quite straightforward when you distill it down into these 3 questions and answer those and build your architecture marketing strategy around those answers. I also hear from architects that they don't want to be seen to be too commercial in the way they present themselves and their practice and projects. But I don't think that architecture marketing needs to be a hard sell in order for it to be successful. So in 2020, consumers expect a certain level of connection and engagement with the brands and the service providers that they intend to make purchases from. You know, we've all been using social media, some of us for sort of 13 years. Most of us have probably been fairly active on social media for the last 7 to 10 years. And that has changed the way that brands, organisations, companies build relationships with their clients. And so one of the important take-homes from this presentation is I want you to be starting to think about how you might start to foster that sense of engagement with people who might show an interest in learning more about your practice. Once you have clarity around these 3 questions, that who your ideal clients are, what your message is, and the best channels with which to deliver them, it's pretty straightforward. And it's worth pointing out here that you get to control the tone of your messages. So you can pitch your marketing activities in a way that aligns with your practice and personal values. Today, we're going to focus on the 3rd question around which channels should you use to deliver your message. Incidentally, if you'd like help figuring out the answers to the first 2 questions, I have a 10-week intensive consulting package for architects, and I'll provide a link to that at the end of this session if you'd like to find out more. So the 6 channels that I've come up with as being the most important ones for architects to focus on are listed in order of importance from 1 to 5. So they are referrals is the first one, email marketing, social media, publishing and awards, and all of those 5 channels should direct leads and future clients to your website. So your website is the 6th and the most important channel in the framework. I'm not suggesting that you use all 6 of these channels at once. That would probably drive most people over the edge. It would be a lot of work, but you can stagger your use of the channels throughout the year depending on what's happening in your practice and any external events that you might be involved in. So, for example, you might focus on getting your awards ready for February, March, and then once they're done, you turn your attention to publishing, and then through the course of the year, you're trying to generate a constant flow of referrals and social media posts, and hopefully you're going to be sending some regular email newsletters as well. I recommend a monthly basis as being an ideal frequency for you to be getting in touch with the people that you have on your list. And you also want to be adding new content to your website on a fairly frequent basis. And the reason for doing that is that the Google crawl bots spend more time indexing and updating search results for sites that are regularly updated. So if your site is a very static entity that doesn't get a lot of new material added to it on a frequent basis, Google isn't going to prioritise your site in its search results. Now, I agree that at first glance this might seem like a lot of work or it might appear complicated, but actually the marketing metrics spreadsheet outlines and explains which data and analytics you should be tracking, and it also provides resources on page 2 to help you better understand those analytics. So I think it would be great if you can take a benchmark reading today, get a sense of which channels you're currently using, and then put some dates in your diary to update the spreadsheet at regular intervals. So fortnightly or monthly would be fine. And then over time, you'll start to see patterns and trends emerging from that data around your marketing activities. And that those trends and patterns will help you decide which activities you should focus on next. This quote from the English mathematician Carl Pearson, who supposedly established the discipline of mathematical statistics in the turn of the 20th century, speaks to the value of measuring and reporting on your activities. So the results come not so much from the data that you record, although of course that's useful, but the greater benefit is going to arise from the fact that you are going to regularly invest your time and attention on marketing, because marketing is not a set and forget activity. And to achieve great results, it basically requires regular attention, just like your practice finances do or your projects themselves. I found another great quote online that I wasn't able to confirm attribution for, but I still think it's a useful sentiment to mention at this point, and that is 90% of marketing doesn't work because it doesn't get done. So I don't want you to be one of those architects who put your marketing in the too hard basket and as a consequence had no new projects to be going on with because you didn't prioritise finding new clients. So the first channel that I mentioned is referrals, and it's first because it's one of the most powerful ways for you to generate new clients. And it's also quite underutilised, I find, in most architecture practices. They don't tend to have formal systems for collecting and distributing materials to boost referrals. So most of my clients tell me that they still generate the majority of their new business and projects via word of mouth. And so just quickly think about your own practice. Have you got a mechanism currently for tracking where your new inquiries come from? And do you ask people who come into your practice how they found you and what channels they use to come across your practice or to find out more about you? And I'm wondering if you know how many inquiries you need to generate in order to create the volume of new projects that you want to commence each month or year. Excuse me. So say you're a 4-person practice, you do mainly residential work, and you have a goal of bringing in 1 new client a month. Do you have a sense about how many people need to visit your website and start to engage with you in order for that 1 new client a month to emerge? Or do you have a different system that is bringing in that 1 new client in some other way? You might be using referrals already. My anecdotal research suggests that very few architects have implemented a formal referral system, one that's designed to collect client testimonials, and these form the basis then of your marketing materials across the other channels. Also, I wonder if you're capturing the low-hanging fruit that exists within this referral channel. So, for example, going back to that small practice that does mainly residential work, have you left a stack of your business cards with your satisfied clients so that they can keep them, in their hall table or their kitchen drawer when their friends come and experience their home and say, gosh, I can't believe what you've done with the place. It's amazing. Who's your architect? They pull out your card, hand it over and say, here's our architect's details. They were fantastic. Get in touch with them. That's a really simple thing that you can do to boost your referral network, and it doesn't need to cost you anything. It's just a matter of asking your past and current clients whether that they would be happy to be ambassadors for your practice in that way with their friends and family who are experiencing your work firsthand. So if you don't already have a referral system, I definitely encourage you to start with this channel and to put some building blocks into place, especially if you already know that word of mouth is the thing that brings in most of your new clients. So set up a feedback loop. You can collect testimonials, use them to create marketing messages using your clients' actual words and phrases. And then you can start to distribute those messages across your various channels. So if you're working in a firm that does mainly commercial projects, you might take a different tack with your referrals. You might start to create case studies. They can include credit details for all of the collaborators, consultants, product suppliers, etc., that helped you realise that project. And then you start to share those very widely so that all those people that contributed at points throughout the journey can see the finished result. I often see, someone used a particular brand of tiles, or they installed, ovens from a particular supplier. The people who provided those fixtures, fittings, equipment, they love seeing the projects they end up with. So if you can create case studies and then tag those people in on LinkedIn, you're going to have a fairly expansive reach in terms of your case study being seen by lots of eyeballs, because LinkedIn's the most effective social media channel for referrals. It provides the highest organic reach of any of the social media platforms. And if you're working in commercial sectors, it's a very good idea to be active on LinkedIn and to be posting regularly and tagging in your collaborators so that people through their networks will see your posts even without your contacts commenting or sharing them. This quote from Scott Cook is quite telling around this new modern marketing method. He was a co-founder of Intuit, which invented QuickBooks, and he's been in online business for 20 plus years. And this quote highlights the importance of person-to-person, or in your case, client-to-client conversations about your brand and your service offering. So establishing a referral network that's centred around your past and current clients helps your future clients to see that you understand their issues and their dreams and their pain points and what keeps them awake at night. So it's a really useful way for you to build connection and to foster likability and trust between you and your future clients. So if you've got the spreadsheet in front of you, have a look at it now, and I'll just quickly explain which analytics you can record under your referrals channel. Most of the LinkedIn metrics are accessed via the premium service, but there are some that are available in the free plan, which we're going to track on the spreadsheet. So if you have a practice page, you can note the number of followers you currently have. And for any individuals, which it might be directors or the people who post on behalf of your practice, you can note the number of connections that they have. And the stats around who viewed your profile and who viewed your posts. So those are fairly easy to find on your homepage in LinkedIn, and that gives you data for the past 30 days. So if you were to be updating your spreadsheet once a month, you'd start to see fairly quickly where your growth is happening if it is on LinkedIn. You can also look at your feed, which is your posts and articles that you've put there, to see which of your recent posts was seen by the most people, and that will give you an idea of the type of content that's most popular and that's resonating with your audience and connections there. And you'll probably notice, if you haven't already become aware of this, that posts about people, especially with photos of people, i.e. the people who work in your firm, tend to perform better on social media than posts about projects. So consider dropping in every now and again a post around people who are working in your practice. Back to the spreadsheet, I've also included a couple of rows for you to track any events and testimonials under the referral section. So that's so that you can make a note of when you attended networking functions with your collaborators or peers or future clients, and also when you distributed testimonials across your other channels. And then you can start to observe whether those activities contribute to traffic spikes or to lead generation bumps on your website. The second channel is email marketing. Email is useful for a couple of reasons, including the fact that you own your email list. And this is a good point at which to remind you to take regular backups or downloads of your list. If you're using a hosting service like MailChimp, you can take a download and then store that on your practice computer, so that if for some reason MailChimp was to go down or be subject to a ransomware attack, you've still got your data locally. That speaks to the fact that unlike traditional marketing methods like publishing and awards and even social media, email marketing is not a one-way or broadcast channel. So you can invite your subscribers to enter into a dialogue via your email. So you can ask questions, you can take a poll, you can request feedback about a particular topic, and you can use your email as a two-way channel rather than as a broadcast medium. And that will help give you valuable insights to better understand what your future clients need and how your offer might serve them. I've touched in previous presentations on the topic of marketing funnels, and so I'll just mention them briefly here in case you're not familiar with the term. So the concept of the marketing funnel was first invented in 1898 to describe consumer behaviour from the point where a total stranger to your brand first learns about your product or service to the point of transaction when they agree to purchase. So there's several stages along the way, and the number of people who proceed through the funnel shrinks from the top. So at the awareness stage, you're getting a lot of people into your funnel, but as they move through evaluation and transaction, which is sometimes called conversion, that number is shrinking to the point where, you might only have one client for the 100 people that came into your funnel, and hopefully you can convert that one client after they've satisfactorily completed a project with you into an ambassador for your brand, for your referral network. So understanding how the funnel works will help you to prioritise your marketing activities across the various channels. Sorry, I just skipped ahead. So social media, publishing and awards are great platforms to build awareness of your offering and to attract and appeal to people who don't yet know about you. So they are working at the top of the funnel. But it's important to remember that you don't own those channels. So the social media platforms, any publications you seek to be published in, and awards organisations, they can change the rules of engagement at any time. And, we're seeing a contraction in the media landscape. So some publications are starting to either be closed or perhaps go online. So the way that they do business is changing. The channels that you do own and control, which is your referral network, your email list and your website, are the best ones to use for lead generation. And the reason for that is because social media platforms like Facebook and Instagram, they're owned by external entities, and their sole purpose for existing is to make money. They're not there as a community service to help you promote your architecture brand. And because of the way the algorithms work and the fact that they can change the rules of engagement at any time, that means that any link that you have with future clients is indirect. It's not something that you have control over. And we saw recently, I'm not sure if you were aware, that an organisation in Melbourne that advocates for good design in furniture and against rip-offs, they had their social media, their Instagram account shut down about 2 months ago. And as a result, they lost contact with all those people that they'd built up as a following and had to start from scratch. So, and that they weren't able to find out from Instagram why it had been shut down or to get it reinstated. That's a fairly extreme example, but other things can happen that can disconnect you from your followers. A change in the algorithms. Sometimes if you keep posting the same hashtags to every Instagram post, you may notice that your engagement drops, or that not many people are seeing your posts from hashtags. And that's what's called a shadow ban. And so Instagram has almost put a stop on your account or your profile and your post going into wide circulation, because it's penalising you for using the same hashtags over and over again. So I think it's useful to understand that those channels that you don't have control over, you should be mindful about how you use them and not put all of your marketing eggs in that basket, which is why email is a really useful channel, because you own it. So now you can start to see how important it is in your overall marketing plan. So ideally, you should be continually growing your subscriber list via your website, which means that you're constantly expanding your field of prospects And some of those people will move through the funnel to become future clients. It's not enough to grow your list though. You also need to prioritise communicating with the people on that list on a regular basis. And that's how you nurture those relationships and continue to demonstrate your expertise and the fact that you understand their issues and problems and are the best placed person to help them find the solution that they're looking for around your service offering. Another great thing about email is that it's a push method of engaging with your audience. So social media and publishing are static methods that require the user to open the app or to pick up a magazine, but email is a way for you to insert yourself into your recipient's inbox at a time that suits you. Of course, there's no guarantee they're going to open your email and actually engage with it, but you get to control the frequency and the content of your messages. And, you know, remember that people have signed up to hear from you and they've given their permission to get your correspondence. So once they've done that, you are perfectly entitled to create a kind of respectful relationship with them through email. As I mentioned earlier, it's also an intimate one-on-one conversation. You can ask them questions. If you've collected their first name, you can address them directly when you open your email. And the beauty of email is that it reminds your subscribers that you're still there. You're still in business. You're still around the corner. You're still creating great schools or whatever it is that you do, and you're still in a position to help them solve their problems. And just for a moment, I want you to think on how many emails you receive each week from brands that you've signed up to hear from. So there might be products, they might be related to architecture or not. There might be collaborators whose emails you've signed up to receive. You might have subscribed to some thought leaders via their websites. And I'm wondering if those emails that you receive sometimes prompt you to make a purchase or take action when you had no intention of doing either of those things before you received the email. It's just a useful way for you to reflect on how you use email as a consumer and to then start to think about how you might start to use it as someone offering a service. So if we go back to the spreadsheet now, these are the metrics that you would track for your email, and you can access this data from your email host, whether that's MailChimp or MailerLite or another service offering. So you want to keep a track on your subscriber count, and you're hopefully growing that over time. Your open rates, and they're going to likely drop as your subscriber count goes up. Your click-through rates, which is the number of people that respond to your call to action. So in your email, you say, if you want to learn more, visit my website. That's your call to action. And your unsubscribe rates, and that's going to tell you whether or not your content is engaging and resonating with your audience. The third channel is social media, and everybody knows that, you know, this is the hardest one to wrap your head around because the list of social media platforms is long and growing. So we've got Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, LinkedIn, Twitter, and they're just the main ones. You know, there's new things coming along all the time, although Snapchat and TikTok are probably not ideal places to be trying to connect with architecture clients, but maybe I'm wrong. There's a lot of social media platforms that you could be spending time on, and it can feel daunting to work out which one or two might be the best ones for you to focus on. And most architects seem to favour Instagram. Sorry, let's move forward again. Most architects seem to favour Instagram, probably because it's visual, it's focused on photos, it's carefully curated, it's a great place to see what your peers and competition are up to. But I'd like to ask you to think about whether or not that's the best place for you to connect and engage with future clients. Now, of course, the answer to that question depends on who your ideal clients are. Are they homeowners? Are they government agencies? Are they commercial entities, cultural organisations, or a mix of all of these? So you can see that answering the first marketing question, who is your audience, is really fundamental to knowing which social media platforms are going to serve your practice best. This quote from David Ameland, who's an international speaker, author and business journalist, underscores the importance of using social media strategically. And to me, that means understanding the role that it plays in your broader marketing strategy and ensuring that you're active on the platforms that your ideal clients frequently use. So how do you find out which social media platforms are the most worthwhile for your practice? You can take a benchmark measurement today of the platforms that you're currently using, and then you can track those over time. We covered LinkedIn earlier under referrals. And you can also do some market research and ask your past and current clients which social media platforms they use and how they first found out about your practice. Now, I know that a lot of architects are pretty wary of Facebook. A lot of architects don't tend to use Facebook. They would rather be on Instagram for various reasons. But I think it's really important for the purposes of understanding where your future clients are to consider using Facebook. And what I would suggest is, if you're not using it currently, to use it for a few months and track the metrics in your spreadsheet, and then you'll have some comparison data to look at whether Instagram or Facebook is delivering more traffic to your website. Facebook's the world's most popular social media platform, and there's about 16 million active users a month in Australia. And those are figures from July 2020, so fairly up to date. The second most popular social media platform in Australia is YouTube. It has 15 million monthly users. And Instagram is in third place with 9 million monthly users. LinkedIn is seventh, and it has 5.5 million active monthly users, although obviously it's a subset because it's a professional network, so it's fairly valuable in that respect. So given that about 64% of Australia's population is active on Facebook, compared to 36% who use Instagram, it's worth asking the question, is the Facebook audience one that you wish to ignore by choosing not to be active on that platform? Now, once you've collected your social media metrics, you need to analyse them in the context of your website traffic. You want to be able to understand which social media platforms are delivering the most traffic in terms of volume, and also the behaviour of those visitors when they arrive. So how long do they stay? How many pages do they look at? And what's your bounce rate? So a bounce rate is the percentage of people who come into your website from an external source. It might be social media or a magazine. They come in, they look at the page they arrived on, and then they bounce out again. So they're not staying on your website. They're not exploring. They're not finding out more about you. They're just in and out. So you're probably thinking, I've got no idea how to find out this information about where my website traffic is coming from. And if that's the case, I have some great news for you. So in the tracking spreadsheet, there's a link to obtain this free analytics dashboard. This was created by a web marketing expert who's based here in Perth. Her name's Kat Skriner. And this dashboard that she's created sits over the top of Google Analytics. So Google Analytics is free to use. You need to download a Google Analytics tracker and embed it on your website. And there's also instructions about how to do that on page 2 of my spreadsheet. Once you've done that, I encourage you to go and get Kat's free dashboard. Again, a link in the spreadsheet. And you can use it. It sits over the top, and it basically extracts the most useful metrics from Google Analytics, which is vast and very complex for someone who's just starting out in this area. And so her dashboard presents these figures to you in this easy to read single page. Now, if you're a data nerd like me, having access to this rich trove of useful information may actually change your life. We're going to look at this dashboard in more detail a little bit further on when we get into the website section. But firstly, I'm going to quickly talk about publishing. And I'm not going to spend long on publishing or the next section, awards, because hopefully these are channels that you're already familiar with and you're using them frequently and you understand the benefits involved. I do, however, recommend that you approach your publishing with a very strategic hat on. So that means that you need to think about which print magazines you want to appear in before you start sending your project to websites, because once it's been online on a website, a print magazine's not going to be interested in featuring it. So if you want print coverage, do that first. And I also want you to approach magazines and websites that your ideal clients read. So if you're not sure, ask some of your current clients which ones they like, and that's going to help you overcome the tendency of architects to publish in magazines and publications that will build their reputation in the profession. This is not about boosting your professional standing. This is all about connecting with new clients and generating leads so that you bring new business into your practice. If you have been a follower of mine for a while, you know that I've got lots of free resources on publishing on my website. I recently put together a step-by-step guide around how to create a PR strategy and a media kit. And I've put a link there to the document, that blog post, if you like, that contains links to all of those resources around publishing if you want to dive into that and have a look. This quote from Seth Godin, who's one of the gurus of modern marketing, highlights the importance of good storytelling, because consumers these days expect to engage on a personal level with brands and service providers, and architecture is no exception. So that means that you need to determine your preferred story even before you approach a magazine, and then you're going to distribute versions of that story across all of your channels. And I think it's really helpful to include client testimonials in any publishing activities, especially if the publication is going to interview your client. So one of the magazines, well, actually a couple of the magazines that I write for, I always interview the client, and you can learn so much from that conversation that happens with an impartial journalist about your process, what a client might have expected, how your service offering might have exceeded their expectations. There's all sorts of treasure for you as an architect who wants to connect with future clients in that process of having your projects published. So definitely try and include some feedback from clients, either that the journalist generates or that you can generate yourself through questionnaires and surveys at the end of projects. So in terms of tracking what you're going to, in terms of tracking publications on your spreadsheet, I want you to record any dates that magazine or website articles appear, and then you can start to see if they have an impact on traffic spikes or inquiries to your website over time. And awards are similar in that a lot of practices are already using awards, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. But I will say that I did a workshop on awards earlier this year, and not many architects at the moment use awards in a very strategic way. And so the workshop was around helping you frame your entry to speak to three key audiences. You've got jurors, obviously, but you can also speak directly to the media and to future clients. And the reason that I put that workshop together was awards can be one of the most expensive items in your annual marketing budget. And I really wanted to give you some advice and some suggestions around how to make more of that investment. So part of the workshop was around how you can use your awards entries to create marketing materials after the fact. If you missed that workshop but you'd like to attend, I'll be running it again later this year as a precursor to the 2021 awards season. So just keep an eye out for that announcement on my marketing channels. So architects tend to use awards in a fairly inward-focused fashion. But this quote from Joe Chernov, who's a chief marketing officer at various startups in Boston, highlights the power of putting your customers at the centre of your award strategy. So this means describing how your design solution help your clients solve their problems. And, you know, most architects would have problems that were identified through the course of briefing or a project that the client hadn't even realised was an issue for them. So that's one of the beautiful things about architecture. You can address a whole raft of different problems that people aren't even aware that they had. So you should definitely use your awards entries as a way to explain how you do that, where the value is, how you exceeded your client's expectations because you were able to help them navigate issues that they didn't realise were troubling them. So if you use clients' words and phrases from your testimonials, that makes it easy for your future clients to see themselves in your messaging and to connect and engage with your practice. When it comes to tracking awards, the metrics are fairly similar to publishing in that you're going to just record any activity, whether it's social media or the awards events themselves or media coverage that you generated as a result of your awards. And again, you'll be able to see whether those activities lead to any traffic spikes or more inquiries through your website. And by keeping an eye on these tangible results from your awards, you'll also start to get a better sense of whether that investment is money well spent, or whether you might be better off redirecting some of those funds towards the other channels. If after 3 to 6 months you're starting to see a great amount of traction and growth from social media, for example, you might decide that awards are not part of the mix, for next year, or you might reframe the way you submit your awards and see if that leads to more lead generation. Now we've arrived at the 6th channel, and it's listed last, but it's actually the most important because all roads lead to Rome, as they say. So you really want to continually grow your list and then use all of the other channels to deliver traffic, that is prospects who are in your marketing funnel, perhaps at the top in the awareness stage, to your website so that you can continue to build a relationship with them. So once they arrive at your website, you want these prospects who are obviously already interested in your practice and your projects. You want them to give you permission to email them. And for that to happen, you need a sign-up box. Now, when the internet was new, it was enough to have a subscribe form, but nowadays, as digital marketing has matured, people expect to receive something valuable in return for handing over their email address, and that's where the lead magnet comes in. So a lead magnet might be a PDF download, it describes your USP in client-centric terms, or it might be a valuable tool that your ideal client can use, like the marketing metrics spreadsheet that I've given you today. It needs to be valuable enough to entice clients to hand over their email address, and that's a valuable asset that you then need to treat respectfully. Your lead magnet should demonstrate your knowledge and your expertise, and it should set you apart from your competitors. So for all these reasons, it's a very hard-working piece of marketing collateral, and it's worth doing some research about what your clients need and what they might find appealing before you embark on creating your first lead magnet. Now, a lot of architecture practices treat their websites like an interactive business card. And by that, I mean that they're static entities that showcase projects in a way that appeals mostly to other architects and people in the design space. But as we embark into the 2020s, your website needs to be working a whole lot harder than that. It needs to be engaging, and it needs to be an interactive sales tool, and needs to generate new leads and clients for your practice. And the best way to achieve that is via content marketing, which is creating articles or blog posts that answer the kinds of questions and address the issues or problems that your clients have. So once you've uploaded these articles to your blog and using images from your work to illustrate the points that you're making, you can promote those across the key channels that you're most favouring. That might be referral networks, email marketing, and social media, and then use a call to action to redirect people to your blog to find out more. Now, according to Neil Patel, who is a website and digital marketing expert, the number one factor that's going to increase traffic to your website when you do it consistently and well is not SEO, which is search engine optimization, but it's blogging, because Google prioritizes your website when it contains the kind of content that people are searching for online. So this quote from online publisher and social media marketing authority Wendy Pearsall underscores the fact that Google search rankings are not just about the SEO keywords that you scatter through your website copy. Your search rankings are influenced by factors such as how many visitors click on your search results, how long they spend on your site, how many pages they look at while they're there, and how often they share your content on social media and ask other people to visit your site. It's also influenced by the number of websites like online publications, peak bodies, news organisations, podcasts and awards that contain backlinks and traffic to your website. So if you're already familiar with Google Analytics and you have the Google tracker embedded in your website, you're already ahead of the game. And if not, there's an easy fix, because in the spreadsheet, I've given you the instructions about how to install the Google Analytics tracker, and also the dashboard from Cat Screener, which sits over the top of Google Analytics. So all the metrics listed here and in the spreadsheet can be accessed from both of those sources, Google Analytics and Cat's dashboard. One of the main advantages, though, of Cat's dashboard is that it contains really useful data about the way social media platforms direct traffic to your site. And that data is both quantitative and qualitative in that it shows you how many visitors, but also what they do when they arrive. So in terms of bounce rate, I touched on that earlier. Bounce rate averages vary across industries and sectors, but research by Brafton found that the average across all website types is 58%. So that means 58% of people who arrive at your website from a referred source are just going to look at one page and leave again. Now, if your bounce rate figure is higher than 70%, that's indicating that your website is not sticky, it's not engaging, it's not enticing to people to look around and to explore and to learn more about your practice. And so that's problematic. So if you've got a bounce rate over 70%, that's something that you might start to address in the first instance. You might have other metrics that you want to add to the tracking spreadsheet that I've provided. So if you're using Google AdWords, for example, or Facebook ads, or you've got a presence on House, please feel free to add any other tracking lines to the spreadsheet. It's obviously designed to be customizable and to work for your practice. So once you have downloaded the spreadsheet, make it your own, make sure you use it and frequently update it, and then you'll be rewarded by the kind of data and insights that it provides you to help you steer your future directions. That's basically the end of the 6-channel system overview. So as I've mentioned, it's a framework. It's designed to be customised. It's designed to for you to tailor for your own practice, to add additional platforms, channels, metrics, whatever you need to the spreadsheet. I touched earlier on the fact that you should be tracking where your clients are coming from. So you might want to incorporate that data into this spreadsheet so that you're looking at it all together on a monthly basis, for example. So that's the end of the presentation. I hope it's given you a clear sense of the best marketing channels for architecture practices in 2020 and beyond. And once you start using the system, you should obtain clarity around which channels are the best ones for your practice and where you can invest your time and effort going forwards, and also about how they work together to increase your brand awareness and generate new business. Now, if you're interested in finding out more about what I do, I offer a one-on-one consulting package, which you can find more details about that on my website. And I also am going to be launching a course based on this marketing metrics, but in much more detail. And it'll probably kick off at the beginning of September. So I'd love you to sign up for that if you think that this is going to be a useful thing for you to get a handle on your marketing going forward. And I'd like to say thank you for coming along, and also thanks to the Institute for inviting me. And I'd love to answer any questions that you have.
Cool. Thank you, Rachel. Great to have you, Rachael Bernstone from Sounds Like Design. Good to have you with us. A number of questions. I've scribbled some down. Some people have emailed me some questions. So if you don't mind, I'm just going to spend a few minutes going through them. One of the questions that came in said, look, we could spend all day doing this and we can see the benefit in it. But what is your sort of rule in terms of percentage dedicated towards digital engagement? How much time would you put and allocate towards this if you're a small trader?
So I think 1 to 2 hours a week is probably a good time to allocate in the first instance. So it will take you probably an hour to get these metrics, to get them benchmarked if you were to use this spreadsheet. And then you probably need an additional hour a week to propagate your various channels. So whether that's your social media, or you're writing an awards entry, or you're trying to have a project published. So once you've got your metrics tracked, you should probably only spend half an hour to an hour a month updating those, and then an hour a week on your other marketing activities.
That's a lot less than I thought, so that's good. Okay. Just one thing, more of an administrative thing. There's a number of people just saying in the comments that the Seeking Digital link, that link to the Seeking
Oh,
Digital in
yes.
the spreadsheet doesn't seem to be working.
Oh, that's a shame. It was on the check, but I'll go and find it.
Okay. What I might do, just for those of you who are still on the call, and in fact everybody that's registered, I might send that link out if that's okay with you, Rachel, so everybody has access to it.
Yes.
All right, so
great.
let's not worry about that. Like, moving on with another question, just in terms of a question that's coming from Millicent on the chat, and she says she's got a question about email marketing. Now, we all know we get spammed constantly, 3 or 4 emails a day from Qantas and Virgin Australia and Coles and Woolies and whoever else. It can be seen by junk mail. Classified as junk mail, it goes into a particular folder. Now, if a portion of your database, this is Millicent's question, if a portion of your database hit the unsubscribe button when you're sending out stuff, say on MailChimp or something like that, and you're locked out of then sending future updates via MailChimp to them, they're never going to see that again. How do you get around those people that just disengage with you from the outset?
So I would say that those people are not your ideal clients. And the purpose of doing the work at the beginning around identifying who you wish to speak to and where you can deliver value and who's going to find your service most appealing is going to help you get a very clear sense of who you wish to be in communication and building a relationship with. And if someone opts out of your email, then clearly they're not interested in having that relationship with you. But that means that you're then putting your efforts and your energy into the people who remain on your list who have demonstrated that they wish to be there. And I think that once you get into the habit of building this kind of relationship and building the know, like and trust factor, which is what social media really helps you to do, you're going to find that the people who come into your practice and want to actually do projects with you, they're coming from your list because that level of trust exists. So if you don't have an email list and you haven't been using email marketing in this way, it's not going to be something that happens overnight. But this process of building trust and demonstrating what your service offering is and how it can provide value to those people, you're going to generate a good following of people who are interested. And over time, you'll get a sense of how many new leads you need a month in order to get that one person to sign up, for your service. And so, as well as being around marketing and comms, this is also a business strategy because there's no point putting a lot of effort and time into a lead generation or a marketing activity that's not actually producing results.
One of the questions on the chat, this is a fascinating one. Look, a lot of us don't have a huge amount of money. COVID's hit us in the pocket. Financially, we can be struggling. What's the one action? This is from Adrian, and he says, what's the one action that has the biggest bang for your buck? What if you had to just pick one thing?
I think it's got to be referral network. So especially if you already know that most of your new projects come from word of mouth. I mean, think about how you've generated new work in the past. Has it been, someone just walked into a shop front off the street and said, I need to buy architecture? Probably not. So if you know that word of mouth, I've had architects tell me that they've got a spreadsheet to track where their new clients come from, and something like 70% is via word of mouth. So you can do quite a few things right now to start collecting testimonials from your past and existing clients, and that doesn't need to cost you anything. It's going to take time, obviously, but some people have an abundance of time and not so much money, so that's a useful way to spend it. I have a download on my website that's a questionnaire, and it's a questionnaire that you can download and customise and tailor and then send to your clients. So then you're starting to collect testimonials. You're asking them if you've got permission to use them on social media. You've got images of the completed project. Hopefully you might get a portrait of the person who's providing the testimonial, and then start propagating that across social media channels. And then you're getting this effect, which is called social proof in this new marketing era that we're living in, where it's not you saying that your project is great or that your process or your practice is fantastic, it's your client. And that conveys even more kudos than you can ever do just by spruiking your own business.
A question from Joanne. This is more of a practical one. Now, she's looking for an agency to help her with PR Okay,
Sure.
so public relations, press releases, all those kind of good things. Any agencies that you could kindly recommend? I'm not sure where Joanne
absolutely.
is.
There's a couple in Melbourne. I think it's her name Alicia Bennett, who runs New Doors. There's Lindy Johnson in Queensland and Amy Edwards at Markedly, also in Queensland. In New South Wales, Nikita Morell does copywriting for architects. So that's three in the major cities. There are others. Dave Sharp, Vanity Projects, is focused on marketing and social media. So definitely there's quite a few people who have specific architecture skills operating in the marketing and PR space. And I think that's one of the things that's made people reluctant to seek help, the fact that architecture is its own special entity and its requirements are very different to other sectors. So you do need someone, I think, with architecture background and knowledge in order to do this well.
Thanks for that. There were a lot of names. I tried to scribble some of them down, but I didn't get all of them in. But what I would recommend to Joanne, look, if you want to reach out to Rachael afterwards, please do so.
Absolutely.
I will also notice that Talina on the chat has put in the correct link to the Seeking Digital website as well. So for everybody, if you're still online, check the chat. There it is, the Seeking Digital link as well. Look, just a couple more questions. Let's talk about blind spots. We know that there are common challenges that architects face across different states and territories in Australia. What's one of the most common things that you see in terms of, a rookie error or, sort of a thing that you see quite often that you go, oh, this is what a lot of architectural practices do?
Michael. On Instagram, which is the social media platform of choice for architects, wrongly, I think, because you're largely appealing to your colleagues and collaborators and peers on Instagram. People post captions that are incomprehensible. They're archy speak and they're babble and they don't make sense. And if I'm a punter and I'm thinking about renovating and I see your post on Instagram and I can't understand it, I'm just going to scroll on by. And so you need to remember that people's attention spans are short. They're down to 8 seconds now. You don't have a lot of time to engage and connect and grab people's attention. You need to do it in every post. So don't be posting things, for the benefit of your peers or other people in the profession, or talking about, parts of architecture that are obscure and not relevant to your ideal client. Find out what your ideal client's pain points and trouble spots are and build your social media posts around those.
It's true. I suppose your peers really aren't going to pay your bills, are they? So it's about the clients really at the end of the day. Yeah, very, very true. And no more true as that than here in Melbourne. Look, my final question, and this is not really a question, it's a comment that was on the chat and it's intrigued me ever since I've seen it and I've been thinking about it. And it was just pretty much, let your work speak for itself. You don't need to do anything, just let your project speak for yourself. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that's a terrible idea.
Apologies to the gentleman who wrote that on the chat, I would say, but please explain why you think that's a terrible idea.
That was a headline in Habitus 3 months ago. So-and-so architect doesn't do marketing, they let their work speak for themselves. The problem with doing that or taking that approach and not thinking that you need to understand how consumers behave and how you can meet them when they're at, is that you're assuming that a very small proportion of the population who can read architecture and look at a building and see the benefit and the value and the appeal of it are then going to ring you and say, I'm ready to do my house. That is not how marketing works in 2020. And so while it might have been okay when architects were seen as people who provided projects or services to patrons, we are operating in an entirely different world now. And people on social media or in the way that they engage with brands and service providers, they're not sitting back waiting for the work to speak for itself. Does a doctor say they'll come to me when they're ready? No. A doctor says, if you need help with your health or your this or your that, here's how I can help you. Architects have boxed themselves into a corner to provide houses for less than 5% with the view that the work should speak for itself. And I want to make architecture more accessible to a wider audience. I want people who are currently accessing design and building services from project home builders and building designers and designing their own houses and then getting a drafty to draw it up. I want them to engage with architecture, because only architecture is incorporating all of the complexity that we're facing in life around, you know, climate emergency and procurement challenges and safety and all of those things. So architects are best placed to deal with the very complex world that we find ourselves in, but they're not going to be able to do it if they're just standing back and saying the work will speak for itself. You have to engage. People buy from people. So you need to put yourself out into the frame and position yourself as an expert that people will feel confident procuring services from.
I suppose it's okay to say that when you've had, you know, a lifetime in architecture, a career that, you know, has many different impressive builds behind you and that kind of stuff.
In Australia who fit.
That's what I mean. It's that niche.
Glenn Murcutt.
Yep.
You know, there's a
John
couple.
Wardle. Yeah.
John Wardle. I think, you know, you could probably put Vokes and Peters and Sean Lockyer into that category. People go to them because they're a named architect, but there's a vast tranche of architecture practices which are not at that point of the market, and they need to make their services accessible, legible, appealing, and to grow the pie. Like, we don't want to be fighting more architects coming out of uni every year. We don't want to be fighting over an increasingly shrinking pie. We have the power through marketing and communications to grow the pie, and that's going to lead to better built environment outcomes for everybody.
One couple of questions, really. One is for me to answer. In terms of posting, this is a recording, of course, it's always being recorded. We have a whole heap of all of our lean-ins that are all recorded, and they're lodged on our COVID-19 dedicated website. So if you go to architecture.com.au, there's a couple of sliding pages there. You'll see that there's a COVID-19 response page. Click on that. Lean-ins right up the front, and then you'll see a link there. But I'll send it to you all on email afterwards, just to make sure that you get it correctly. Now, a question. This is from Danielle. Final question. Let's do that. Can you please tell us where on your website the sample referral question PDF is?
I can't off the top of my head.
What if I send it out on a link later for
Absolutely.
everybody?
That'd be great. I'll send it to you, Michael. Thanks.
All right, let's do that, Danielle, for you. What we'll do is we'll send it to you and everybody on the chat to make sure you've got it as well. I think we better call it there. I've just realised the time. You're a real tonic to talk to.
Sorry, I ran a bit over.
No, that's totally fine. It's 12 minutes past 1, but you've been, you know, the valuable content that we've learned out of today's session has been fantastic. I mean, this is a lean-in which we've actually been able to have tools and resources to use to actually help measure. There's some really fantastic stuff that we can actually put our finger on and determine, you know, are we better now than we were a month ago? So that's great. So thank you so much. Rachael Bernstone from Sounds Like Design. I am going to let you give yourself a plug. So if people want to find out more about Sounds Like Design, what's the best way to get in touch?
My website is soundslikedesign.com.au. The fact that you've downloaded the metrics tracker means that you're now on my email list. Obviously, you can unsubscribe at any time, but I hope you'll stick around and get more insights and more useful information. And obviously, I'm very happy to accept feedback as well. So if you want to get in touch with me, send me an email, tell me what you thought, ask me for resources if there's something else I can help you with.
Oh, that's great. Thank you very much, Rachael. It has been fantastic. Look, we may also get you back on in a few weeks' time, if that's okay, if you're keen, because there's been a lot of positive feedback. I'm getting texts now from people saying, can we please have you back? So your popularity has spoken for itself.
Excellent.
Let's leave it there, but thank you so much for that. And so that's really it for today's Lean-In. Do join me on Thursday. We've got Bronwyn Weir joining me again on Thursday. Remember, she presented a couple of weeks ago, really, on the Building Confidence Report. There was a huge amount of Q&A, and I couldn't get anywhere through, like maybe even only 10% of it. So she's coming back on Thursday. So if you have got any questions about the Building Confidence Report, zap me, michael.linky@architecture.com.au, and just pop your questions to me, and I'll go through those with Bronwyn on Thursday. So that's it for today's Lean-In. Thanks very much for joining me. I'm glad that Rachael was so useful and so supportive of us as architects really struggling through the current situation in which we find ourselves. But I'll see you again on Thursday, 12 noon, Australian Eastern Standard Time. Until then, do stay safe. As always, I've been Michael Linky here at the Institute of Architects. Good to spend some time with you. Look forward to seeing you all on Thursday. Until then, do stay safe. Thanks very much. Good to see you all.